Welcome, everybody. I'm the journalist Sin-seer, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with producer DJ Mighty My. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We want to take it back a little bit, talk about the 25th anniversary of the High and Mighty's debut album, as well as what you have going on in 2024. But for those who may be new to you or may have forgotten, can you take us back to where you were born and raised?
For sure. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on September 1st, 1972. Um, to Eileen and David Berger. I got an older sister named Samantha. Um, and that's where it all started.
No doubt. Take us back to Philly, teenage years for you as a youngster.
My father was a sociology professor at Temple University, the school in Philly. So I grew up like the son of a professor. My mom moved to New York when I was like in fifth grade. So I split my time between New York and Philly. And I think that's what really gave me my kind of hip hop roots, absorbing both cities, equally. And of course, New York was a little bit ahead of Philly. But in that time, Philly was like a real close second to New York when it came to hip hop. So I was taking in two cities that were kind of like, on top of the hip hop world and releasing brilliant artists every month. So that's where I definitely got my hip hop roots.
Take us back to some of your hobbies and interests, teenage years.
I'd say I was definitely very, very into sports, following sports, playing sports. Um, Definitely once I got into hip hop, it was like a freight train that couldn't be stopped. Nobody was going to tell me anything. So that happened. I first heard, Grandmaster Flash like in 1982, but it wasn't until Run DMC came out with Sucker MCs in 83 where that was it for me. Full on love of hip hop. Didn't want to hear any other genres. Um, so yeah, that was, I'd say sports and hip hop were my two loves as a teenager.
Before getting into music yourself, you mentioned, of course, Grandmaster Flash, Run DMC. Who were some of your other musical influences?
Well, the big three to me were Fat Boys, Run DMC, and Houdini. And 1984 Christmas, my mom got me those three albums underneath the Christmas tree. So I thought I was so cool because I was a Houdini guy. Everybody, Run DMC was everybody's number one. But I said, no, I like Houdini more than Run DMC. So I thought I was like the odd one.
Right, no doubt. Talk a little bit about getting involved with music. Was DJing your first love? I mean, were you out there, participating in the five elements, maybe graffiti, maybe b-boying? For you, how did you get into music?
Well, my father was best friends with this very famous jazz musician, bassist named Milt Hinton. And he and my father wrote a book together about Milt's life. And all during Milt's life, he took pictures. So he's almost like a 20th century historian. And my dad wrote a book about him. They put it out with his photographs and his life story. And then my dad also made a documentary about him. So very early in my musical upbringing, where I was around very like impressive musicians. Like this is a picture of me and Dizzy Gillespie backstage at Carnegie Hall when I'm like 10 years old, I'd say. So being around legendary musicians at an early age definitely put the little root in me. But initially, I tried to be a rapper. I think everyone did, and
Right.
that didn't go too great. We would do talent shows at our high school, and it was very clear that I couldn't cut it as an MC. But we were also going to those arena shows at the Philadelphia Spectrum at the time. You'd go see Beastie Boys and Public Enemy, or Jazzy Jeff, Public Enemy, and Biz and KRS. And when you would go, you would see the two anvil cases with the turntables in it with the little wooden Gemini mixer being supported. And that either captivated you or it didn't. And for me, it did. Maybe it was because I was a shitty rapper. I was looking for something else to do, but I just fell in love with that whole DJ setup and walking into those arena shows and hearing Jam Master Jay do the bass rub scratches and it just, resonating through the whole stadium, So once I saw the turntable set up, that's what I fell in love with.
What year would you say that you got into being a DJ?
I would say I worked at Foot Locker for a whole summer saving up money for my turntables because buying a Technics 1200, even in 1987, it was $400 or $500. That was like $5,000.
Right.
So just being able to afford the two turntables, and that was, I'd say, the summer of '87. I want to say.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that you paid your dues to get your name out there and get known around the city?
Well, back in those days, you would be fortunate if somebody who was a little bit older and established than you took you under their wing. So my mutual friend at the time, this guy, John Schechter, we went to high school together and he started the Source magazine. So he kind of had street cred already in what he was doing with the Source. And he was also in a rap group when they had a DJ named Kid Swift. And he kind of took me under his wing. He was a West Philly DJ like Jazzy Jeff and Cash Money and DJ Miz. And he was part of that whole crew. So you would really go up to West Philly and you would go to these guys' basements. And that's where like all the magic was happening, just practicing all day, literally 10 hours, 12 hours a day practicing. So I definitely fell in love with it there also and was lucky enough that he liked me and took me under his wing and showed me all he could,
Right. Before the High and Mighty, were you in any groups that materialized with any releases early on?
No, I'd say I did a couple productions first for some Philly groups, a guy named Rashid and Ill Advised. But Mr. Eon from the High and Mighty was also my best friend. So we already had such a friendship and a bond. And we would work on our demos, and then we went to college together, and it was part of our lives, but it was kind of like we were fans first, I would say. You can kind of hear it in our music. We're constantly mentioning our influences and the records that meant so much to us. So although we were trying to improve our craft and make our group good enough to put records out, we were also just students of the game the whole time.
Right. You said you got into DJ in late 80s. At what point does producing come into play?
Well, just like DJing, producing happens when you can afford to finally buy the sampler. So that was my next step. I saved up $2,500 and bought the MPC 60. And that was a huge development in my production because now, whereas I used to be doing sampling for 4 seconds on one of those Newmark mixers, now I had 2 minutes of sampling time, and it just changed everything. So I think that happened probably when I was about 19.
Okay. So when did the conversations with Mr. Eon about forming a group start to take place?
Well, Eon was always writing, never stopped writing, and was always kind of getting better. And it wasn't until Bobito from the Stretch and Bobito show came up to Boston University where we were going to school to host some party. And he came to my crib and I was DJing, and then Eon rhymed for him. And he really liked Eon and invited him to come on the Stretch and Bobito show. So just that one little thing gave us such confidence, such a confident boost. We started doing promos and intros for Stretch and Bob. Then we started working on our demo more. Then they played our demo. So I really credit Stretch and Bob for kind of giving us that boost to think, oh, we can compete in this incredibly competitive, hip hop world.
Right. So you say that it was around 94, 95?
I'd say he came up to BU in 93. We continued to work on our demo 93, moved to New York in 94, then put out our first record on Eastern Conference in 96.
Okay. How'd the name High and Mighty come about?
That is just a pro marijuana name. So Eon is the high, and I'm the mighty. It's just it's a marijuana influence name.